Welcome to the sideboard here at the Baltimore Legacy Open. I'm Glenn Jones, joined today by Drew Levin. Welcome to the booth. It's been a while.
Thank you.
You decided to come here today and cast Show and Tell. Not that unconventional or unusual choice for a lot of players in the room, but you were doing something a little different from many of them. You're actually running a mono blue Show and Tell list that goes into the Infinite combo, and we've seen this before. I believe it was Rob Vaca at a previous Legacy Open some months ago managed a top 8, but we haven't really seen it since. I understand it's had some success in Europe with the Bazaar of Moxen. So why don't you explain to me exactly how this deck functions versus usual Show and Tell?
Sure. So this is a deck that's been largely unknown in America, and a group of, I believe, French and German players developed it for Strasbourg in the Bazaar of Moxen. A gentleman by the name of John Mariacart went 9-0 on day one of Strasbourg with it, with more or less this exact deck. And so it has a number of advantages over more American Show and Tell decks, which we'll get to in a second. But basically the way it works is you're a mono blue deck that casts Show and Tell and puts one of two enchantments into play, either Dream Halls or Omniscience. You then alternate cast Enter the Infinite, which draws you your deck. You then put an Omniscience into play if you don't have one already. You Cunning Wish for Release the Ants, which lets you repeatedly dome your opponent for one, revealing the Enter the Infinite or the Emrakul on top of your deck. And since you keep winning the clash, you keep getting to cast it for free until they're dead.
Makes sense. All right, yeah. Pretty clean, elegant. Obviously, you have Cunning Wish to go get the release answer from the sideboard, so it doesn't gum up the works until you're actually ready to win. Cunning Wish seems like a great role player in the deck. You have a lot of targets you can go get. I went ahead and pulled out the release ants, obviously, but there was one other one that caught my eye. We expect like a bounce spell and a pact of negation, that kind of thing, very usual. What's the Sapphire Charm?
So the Sapphire Charm is sort of another bounce spell for when they have two hate pairs and you can't really beat Canonist plus Teague or Canonist plus Thalia, or Thalia plus Teague. Okay. You phase out one of them, and then you enter the Infinite and find your other sideboarded bounce spell to make them pick up their other one.
Take care of it. All right.
The real joy of having Cunning Wish is that when you put Omniscience into play, the conventional way of dealing with a permanent like that is with some sort of come into play effect, whether that's Oblivion Ring or Detention Sphere or Harmonic Sliver, Caselli Pride Mage, or Venser Shaper Savant. People are going to try and interact with your permanent before you get to cast a sorcery, that being Enter the Infinite. So Cunning Wish lets you respond to that trigger by getting Trick Bind and Trick Binding their effect.
That's actually really nice. I like that.
Yeah. So that's like your kill with backup in a different sense than like casting Show and Tell with counter backup, because you can still get blown out that way just as you can get blown out.
It really punishes people for deciding to run these things, like the one Detention for the one Venser. These have become very popular, and it kind of just gets you.
Right. If they're like, oh well, I've definitely got them covered on the Show and Tell axis, I'll just let it resolve and put into play my Oblivion Ring. You're like, well, I've got this Cunning Wish, you're dead.
All right, so I take it that's one of the advantages you spoke of to regular Sneak and Show. What are the other reasons you decided to go with this list versus Sneak and Show?
It has a much more stable mana base, so it has 10 basic islands and 6 fetch lands. So you're never getting wastelanded off of a blue source, whereas even like the Omni-Tell list with Burning Wish can get its Volcanic Island wastelanded. Obviously, the blue, red, black Sneak and Show deck that plays Thoughtseize,
that's much more.
Yeah, is incredibly vulnerable to Wasteland, and so I didn't want to just let people mize free wins off of just drawing 2 Wastelands against my unfortunately dual heavy draw.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. One of the things that stands out to me about this deck is a lot of people have talked about the M14 Legend rules changes and how that's going to affect Sneak and Show particularly. Obviously, that deck tends to revolve around putting a legendary permanent into play. So for good or ill, it'll change things. This deck actually doesn't have that problem. So do you foresee this deck perhaps becoming the preeminent Show and Tell deck, or just maybe gaining some stuff?
I think that the rules change will really highlight just how little of a guarantee resolving show and tell in Sneak and Show gives you towards winning. So with this, if you cast all of your spells and they all resolve, you are 100% to win the game, assuming that nothing really messed up happens, like they have Draco in their deck and it's in the top 10 cards or whatever.
Sure.
With Sneak and Show, sometimes your best case scenario is, yeah, man, I put into play a sneak attack. I sneak attacked in an Emrakul. I annihilated their board. They're on like 3 life. And then I just drew all the lands in my deck. They rebuilt perfectly, and I didn't get anything going. I bricked on all my cantrips, and I died. I mean, that is a thing that happens. It just happens to you. Or, they drew 3 lands, blew up my sneak attack, and I never drew anything relevant for the rest of the game. Or I drew only fatties and lands. Or, like, some other messed up combination. With this, you kill them on the same turn. It's super clean, and you know exactly what's going to happen before everything happens.
It's an actual combo.
Right, it's an actual combo versus a
powerful
a huge resource advantage that is generally enough to win the game, but rarely an actual guarantee. Unless you're talking about sneak attack, put in Emrakul Gristlebrand, attack you for 22.
Yeah, which is the full Monty.
Right, yeah. But
right.
This full Monty's people much more.
Very, very true. Weldre, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Good luck in the rest of the tournament.
Thank you.